911 location of your emergency.
Hi, something is happening. Something happened in our house. We don't know what.
What is the address of the emergency?
1122.
What is the rest of the address?
Oh, Kings Road.
The energy is everywhere. They don't know how to react.
Tell me exactly what's going on.
One of the roommates has passed out, and she was drunk last night, and she's not waking up.
They're still in this level of denial of what's actually transpired in their home.
Okay.
Oh, and they saw some man in their house last night. Yeah.
At first, the police came out and said there was nothing suspicious about it.
Can I just tell you what happened pretty much?
What is going on currently? Is someone passed out right now?
The dispatcher doesn't want to hear about what they think happened. They want to find out if we can actually save this life.
I don't really know, but pretty much at 4 a.m.
Okay, I need to know what's going on right now if someone is passed out. Can you find that out?
Yeah, I'll come. Come on, but we gotta go check. But we have to.
There was somebody in the house at 4 a.m.?
Is she passed out? She's passed out. What's wrong? She's not waking up.
Okay, one moment. I'm getting help started that way.
Okay, thank you.
We don't see this sort of thing happening on a regular basis.
Okay, and how old is she?
She's 20.
It literally sent a chill through anybody that has kids.
I have already sent the ambulance and law enforcement. Stay on the line.
Okay. There's a police here right now.
Okay.
I think yes.
Are you talking to the officer?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to let you go since he's there with you and can help you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Okay.
Happening right now in northern Idaho, an investigation underway into the deaths of 4 university students. The Moscow Police Department responded to a call for an unconscious person, and that's when they found the 4 victims dead.
There was news of 4 students who had died in a house.
MPD does not believe there is an active threat to the community.
After a couple of days, people had moved on, and it wasn't until much later that people started looking at this a different way.
Moscow, Idaho police offering new details from their investigation.
The 4 were stabbed with a knife, but no weapon has been located at this time.
They were each stabbed multiple times. They believed with a fixed blade knife.
The victims were perhaps asleep at the time in their own beds. Some had defensive wounds, and there were no signs of sexual assault.
It's not a single murder, it's a multiple murder, all taking place in one location.
We cannot say that there's no threat to the community. Please stay vigilant and be aware of your surroundings at all times.
I think people were initially a little freaked out.
It's a horrific crime to begin with, and it's a needless loss of life. People were cut off in their prime. Most crimes, particularly crimes of violence like homicide, are against people who know each other. It wasn't a situation where the house was broken into, where the perpetrator was trying to steal something. So it makes the case even more brazen, even more horrific.
For parents, this is the worst case scenario. When you send children off to school, the last thing you're thinking is that there's going to be a mass murder.
The Candlelight Vigil mourning the 4 University of Idaho students killed last month. Hundreds came to the event. They remembered the college students killed at an off-campus apartment with no known motive.
O God, we cry out in lament and grief for the lives cut short. We ask for comfort and consolation for the families and friends of Ethan, Kaylee, Xana, and Madison.
Madison Mogen, beautiful blonde girl who was at school with her best friend, Kaylee Goncalves. Kaylee and Madison grew up together. They had been best friends since 6th grade. These were just 2 peas in the same pot. They loved social media. They were vivacious young people. They were ready to start their lives.
Ethan and Xana had been boyfriend and girlfriend. Ethan had just come to the University of Idaho as a freshman.
Ethan Chapin was such a special young man. He was one of triplets. He worked at a tulip farm. He sounded like the kid that you wanted to bring home to meet your parents. Zana Kernodle was bubbly and fun and the life of the party. She always had a smile on her face, and all of the pictures that we see of her are smiling and kind. So you now have a picture of these 4 really beautiful kids that were beautiful inside and out, who were just getting started. To hear that 4 kids are stabbed to death in the middle of the night in a small town, at a college town where they're supposed to just be having fun and being safe and learning, was absolutely terrifying.
Normally, the biggest issue in this town is how you pronounce it, Moscow.
I'm Chris Daniels, longtime reporter here in the Pacific Northwest, have traveled all around the country. Hello again from the University of Idaho, where this particular day was in Moscow, Idaho. I've got a long history with Moscow, Idaho. Went to school myself at Washington State University, and it's just a short, straight drive from Moscow to the campus of Washington State University. 8 miles apart, those 2 campuses, and this is small town America.
Very pleasant place to be, very bright and sunny. Even if the weather didn't reflect that, the people did.
It's big enough that you've got things to do, different communities, but it's small enough that it still feels very, very strong.
They're right on the border of Washington and Idaho. It's a college town with an enrollment of just over 7,000 people at the University of Idaho. The town is a little bit less than 30,000 people, and there's not a lot of murders in a town like Moscow.
We are a small town, and there's just that collective grief.
There's just a heavy cloud, I think a depression.
I'm Anne Emerson. I am the senior investigative reporter for Criminally Obsessed. I've been going to crime scenes and talking to victims and trying to understand what happened. There hadn't been any problems in Moscow in a long time. In fact, the last murder, I think, was back in 2015. So there's only so many police officers that they're gonna need, especially when you're looking at the crime rate in an area like this that's very rural. You're not having a lot of crime at all. So it was bare bones.
Moscow's police chief led the recovery of personal items from what is an active crime scene.
We have 25 plus investigators working this case, as well as assistance from the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Idaho State Police. Investigators are continuing to collect evidence at the scene. Investigators are working to develop a timeline to relevant events.
Kaylee and Madison, they were seen walking around in Moscow at a food truck.
This Twitch live stream video from grub truckers in Moscow.
Hello. Hi. Welcome back.
Showing homicide victims Kaylee Goncalves and Madison Mogen getting something to eat around 1:40 Sunday morning on November 13th.
Police also have additional video. Investigators know the girls had been at this bar across town prior to that.
Earlier that day, they took this picture with their roommate Xana Kernodle and Kernodle's boyfriend Ethan Chapin.
Ethan and Xana had been with each other that night as well.
They had just gone over to Sigma Chi to have a fraternity party, which is not far away. It was Saturday night. What are 4 kids that are at a really fun college town going to be doing? They're gonna go out and they're gonna go see their friends.
All 4 returned to their off-campus apartment sometime after 1:45 a.m.
There was other people home at that time.
Those other people were the young lady's 2 other roommates.
This was a house that was known to host get-togethers.
This is one of the houses that everybody goes to when they want to go to a party. And they were comfortable with people being in the house even when they weren't there.
It was not thought to be a quiet house at the end of a block, but it was an area that over time, especially a lot of college students had gone through that house and had been there for one reason or another.
So you've basically got everybody moving back to this house sometime around 2 o'clock. It appears that most of them have gone to sleep. But Xana's awake, and she has ordered DoorDash at 4 o'clock in the morning. Xana and Ethan are in one floor, and then you have Maddie and Kaylee one floor above on the 3rd floor. Maddie and Kaylee were in one bed. Ethan and Xana are in the other area, and they are stabbed and killed. The first realization that something bad has happened in this house is when a 911 call comes from one of these surviving roommates.
Tell me exactly what's going on.
One of the roommates is passed out.
Okay.
Oh, and they saw some man in their house last night. Can I just tell you what happened pretty much?
What is going on currently? Is someone passed out right now?
I don't really know, but pretty much at 4 a.m.
Okay, I need to know what's going on right now if someone is passed out. Can you find that out?
What we get from that, obviously, is that there was somebody in the house at 4 a.m. She saw somebody. There was somebody that scared her enough that she ran back into her room and locked the door and texted the other roommate.
No, it's like a ski mask almost. Shut the F up. Actually, like he has something over his head and mouth. I'm not kidding, I am so freaked out. So am I. My phone is going to die. Come to my room. Run, down here.
One of the surviving roommates may have seen the killer on his way out towards the back sliding glass door. Around 4 a.m., surviving roommate Dylan Mortensen reportedly heard someone who she thought was Kaylee Goncalves saying, "There's someone here," and a male voice saying, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." Mortensen opened her door a 3rd time after she heard someone crying in Zana Kernodle's room, seeing a masked man dressed in all black walking past her as she stood in a frozen shock phase, then locked herself in her bedroom. Investigators say there is physical evidence.
One of the things that was found at the crime scene was this leather sheath for a fixed blade knife, and it was found reportedly on Maddie's bed. This is the only thing that they can find that has been left behind by the killer. So they go and do a DNA on the sheath, and they do find a piece of DNA. They find it on the snap of the sheath, and it's enough for them to be able to run it through CODIS, which is their system to see if there's any matches at all, and it comes up blank. There's nothing. But they've got DNA. So now they need to find a person of interest, a suspect, and then they can start doing some serious detective work and see if they can find a match.
Well, the first big break in this case, if you want to call it that, was the fact that police came out and said, "We think we have a car that may be connected." Detectives continue to focus on a 2011 to 2013 white Hyundai Elantra that they believe had somebody in it who holds the key to cracking this murder case. They were trying to zero in on this car because it had been seen on surveillance video, as it turns out, outside the house at very odd hours.
The white Hyundai Elantra appears on camera, driving past the King Road residence multiple times in the 3 o'clock hour, then speeding off around 4:20 a.m. toward Pullman. It's spotted again on 5 cameras in Pullman and the WSU campus starting at 5:25 a.m.
Moscow police were gathering all this material, trying to put together their case.
We have several hundred pieces of video evidence that we're piecing together.
Those pieces of video are helping the FBI and state police retrace steps.
Traffic cameras, cell phone technology, and comments on students' social media posts have all aided the investigation.
Just a few things I have noticed myself.
Cyber detectives have eaten up any morsel of information, fueling national interest.
Just being a weird, armchair detective.
I feel like it might be like someone who was jealous of them.
The people that are probably the suspects or involved are all flying home.
There was a lot of speculation and a lot of amateur sleuthing on TikTok and Reddit.
Thank you.
The Moscow Police Department really stopped doing repeated press conferences to update people on where the investigation was leading them, so that turned people to go to these social media sites to try and solve it themselves.
Amateur sleuths have a role to play. They can keep the case alive. They can put pressure, informal pressure, on law enforcement and also the courts they can play a critical role. They can also be a distraction.
We do not believe the following individuals are involved in this crime. The 2 surviving roommates.
Moscow police had to come out at a certain point and tell everybody that these people weren't suspects and cross them off the list because there was so much speculation.
Moscow Police Captain Roger Lanier also says this male in the grub truck surveillance video is not believed to be involved either.
A private party who provided rides home to Kaylee and Madison in the early morning hour of November 13th.
And they say that person is also not believed to be of interest.
Thank you.
This was one of those cases that captivated a lot of people's attention, and they were trying to solve it themselves because they felt like Moscow police were not advancing fast enough.
A major breakthrough in this case. An arrest has now been made.
And that person is now awaiting extradition from Pennsylvania. It's the biggest break in the more than 6-week-long mystery, which has prompted speculation across the country. Investigators have identified him as 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger. Pennsylvania State Police arrested him at a home in Albrightsville on a fugitive from justice warrant.
Idaho police formally announced the arrest of Bryan Kohberger late this afternoon in Pennsylvania, hundreds of miles away from the crime. How are the Poconos tied to Pullman and Moscow?
Kohberger is a PhD criminal justice student and has been attending nearby Washington State University, just 8 miles away from the Idaho campus.
Kohberger was like everybody else going home for the holidays. It's Christmas time. So he had his father meet him in Pullman, Washington. He gets into the car with his dad and he drives across the country, back home to Pennsylvania, where he's from. And on that drive, while he's in Indiana, we don't know if it was a coincidence, we don't know why, but twice he gets pulled over in Indiana.
Take a look at your driver's license real quick if I could. See, he's right up on that van, man. He was right up on the back end of that van.
He's following a car too closely. There was nothing strange about the traffic stop, but we have the body camera so we can see what it actually looked like.
But do me a favor, don't follow too close, okay? Oh. All right, thank you. Appreciate you.
And then, just a few miles down the road, the cops stop him again for following too close.
That would seem to suggest that Moscow police, working with federal investigators, had been tracking him across multiple states. There's been further reporting that perhaps they were trying to look at his hands to see if there were any scars. That was an attempt for police to figure out where he was and where he was going and if he still had any fresh injuries.
Accused murderer Bryan Kohberger is now in jail in Idaho. The plane carrying the murder suspect landed at the Pullman-Moscow Regional Airport. Idaho law enforcement took Kohberger to the county jail. The 28-year-old waived extradition in a Pennsylvania court. DNA evidence reportedly links him to the stabbing deaths of 4 University of Idaho students.
This is really serious evidence.
Police believe the murders happened over a 25-minute period the morning of November 13th. Investigators say they connected Kohberger to the killings using DNA evidence, cell phone records, his car, and also surveillance video.
All rise.
Based on phone records, detectives say Kohberger tried to conceal his location during the murders, even visited the area where the murders happened at least 12 times. Court records state DNA matching Kohberger's profile was found on the button snap of a knife sheath near the bed next to one of the victims after the murders.
The defense claimed investigators acted inappropriately when using investigative genetic genealogy to try to isolate a suspect. Here are some of those newly revealed details. Only one person's DNA was detected on a knife sheath. A detective learned Kohberger's name only after the genetic genealogy, more than a month after the killings. An expert testified the FBI admitted they had used a database off limits to law enforcement. Prosecutors did not directly respond to that claim during the hearing, and ultimately the judge did not suppress the genetic genealogy evidence.
The defense has a long road ahead of him in this case.
There are still a lot of unanswered questions in the Bryan Kohberger case. If he goes to trial, if he is convicted, if he's sentenced to death.
These murder counts could get him, with this special circumstance, the death penalty. And in Idaho, that's the firing squad. So that's what he's looking at. One of the things that they're going to have to do is make him more sympathetic to a jury. That gets a lot more difficult when his behavior may seem odd or off-putting or just off. The other thing that they're looking at is who else had access to this house. Everybody had access to this house. The defense naturally can start looking at who else could have been there. Were there two suspects? That's certainly something the defense is going to be playing with. There's another thing that the defense has brought up. They think some evidence for another person of interest could be buried within all of these leads, within all these tips. Have they unearthed something that we just haven't seen yet? That is going to be a major question.
The horrific nature of the crime, the fact that all the people were killed in the same place, all four of them are students, and then the extra component that the suspect is a PhD student studying criminology, criminal justice. Those are, four major components that call attention to this crime, and it cries out, movie made for TV.
Prosecutors want to use a college paper as evidence. It was written by Bryan Kohberger, the accused killer. The 30-year-old wrote the 12-page report in 2020 for a criminal justice course. The paper details how crime scenes should be properly investigated and evidence preserved.
With all of this attention for a small town, the case was made that the trial should be moved down to Boise, Idaho, which is the state capital, a bigger jury pool, and so he is now scheduled to stand trial in August.
I think the entire country's attention is going to turn to Idaho during this trial. This is a 3-month trial. And I believe that we are going to see an enormous amount of interest in this case because it is the ultimate story of horror. Small town America attacked by this horrible event. It has shattered the innocence for that community. And I don't think that America will rest until this is done.